When the people forget their duty, they are no longer human and become something less than beasts. They have no place in the bosom of humanity, nor in the heart of the Emperor. Let them die and be forgotten.
Quartering. In the Imperium of Man, there is no dignity in death for the wicked. The Adeptus Terra well know that for the law to be just, it must be cruel. For the punishment of one man is not only the penalty of that one criminal, but the virtuous act of making an example out of the offender, for the fearsome instruction of the masses, and to the benefit of public order. To Imperial thinking, the betterment of humanity can only be achieved through terror. The greater the trauma, the wiser the punishment. As such, executions are preferably carried out in public within the Imperium, as are many displays of torture. Since most of mankind's teeming trillions in the far future lead lives rattled by misery, malnourishment, disease, grinding poverty, mind-numbingly monotonous labor and wanton brutality, public executions need to be extremely gruesome in order to scare such blunt masses. Being already inured to hardship and the common sight of death and suffering in their everyday lives, the denizens of Imperial worlds are only ever brought sharply to attention through shows of great cruelty that goes above and beyond what their dampened empathy can suppress. The aim of Imperial justice is to rise above what the human cattle's high tolerance thresholds to suffering in others can handle, by a crescendo of showcased pain and death. Therefore, it follows that public executions involving flames, acids, and hot tongs are all popular forms of punishment, as are callous usage of racks, mutilations, and condemnation to beasts of a million different species. Executions that rely upon communal and comradely violence are much praised, for they make the onlookers complicit in the punishment, and fosters a rabid atmosphere prone to pogroms, witch hunts, and lynchings of unwanted elements of the population. Just a few examples of such communal punishment methods include stoning, military decimation, running the gauntlet, flesh clawing, and the crowd hook frenzy. Some local cultures even encourage acts of cannibalism as a way to ritually devour and obliterate traces of heresy and impurity in the communal body. One of the more explicitly violent forms of public execution found within the Imperium of Man is that of quartering, a widespread kind of punishment, favoured in many locations for the sheer bloody spectacle that it provides in order to improve the morales of the masses. Events of quartering will usually involve the gathering of a large number of spectators and displays of pageantry, so as to celebrate glorious justice being carried out in a dutifully stern manner, accompanied by speeches and homilies. The exact means of quartering vary greatly between different districts, continents, and planets. Many such punishments include hanging and drawing before quartering, or scorching with flames, biting of hounds, and other forms of torture, while the wrongdoer is suspended in the air by being pulled in 4 directions. Some versions make use of draft animals, or communal teams of people pulling at wires, chains, or ropes. Others use tractors, tanks, trucks, and similar large vehicles. Still other forms of quartering utilize motorcycles, for a more drawn-out affair than heavier machinery and giant beasts provide. Another advantage to using bikes and dirt cycles consists of the opportunity for agile wheel shows, with one common variant having all 4 motorcyclists driving around in a circle, while the criminal is stretched taut between them in the middle, spinning in confusion while tendons snap and bones pop out of their sockets. Many executioners may assist the tense dismemberment with weapons and industrial tools, while others deem it a better instructive display of warning for others if the four straining forces are to tear apart the condemned body on their own without external assistance. Occasionally, tradition or spontaneous rousing by preachers on the spot dictates the chanting of litanies of hate and penitence, letting the ears of the condemned be filled by a wrath chorus of damnation during his last moments in life. At other times, officio medicae personnel and lay tech men stand ready to salvage the profusely bleeding, limbless torso and head of the punished deviant, in order to convert the still living remains into a servitor, a mind-wiped cyborg that is more tool than man. Whatever the exact procedures involved, quartering usually gets the message across to most bystanders: obey your masters and keep your head down, for the hand of authority is merciless in its pursuit of justice, and maybe next time, you will be the center of attention during such a punishment by quartering. And so fear was revealed to be the greatest teacher, and terror the best guardian of your soul. For if the law is to be just, it must be cruel. Thus is the depraved state of humanity in the grim darkness of the far future. Saw. In the soul's battle of attrition between good and evil, good may gain the initiative and outflanked baser morals by shining examples and shaming harangues. Yet evil ultimately possesses greater reserves and superior logistics. For the nature of life itself is one of consuming other life, of survival at all costs, of biting into your prey and savoring the taste of your victim while you can. For you too shall perish in this grim world. Questions follow of their own accord. What evils are we capable of? What fell deeds may our hands perform? What ruthless plans of action may our minds concoct? And the answers lie close at hand. They are to be found here and now in everyday life, in the endless petty malice children heap upon choice victims, in the lies and deceit of adults, in the dark impulses boiling beneath the surface of humans everywhere. They are to be found in ages past, in a grand parade of cruelties and an orgy of bloodletting, plunder and inflicted misery. But most of all, they are to be found in ages yet to come. For man is set to plunge the bottomless depths of his soul, and there he shall descend into hell on earth and remake the world in his diabolical image. Behold the grim darkness. Behold the future that awaits our species. Behold the Imperium of man, the decaying domains of the God Emperor of Holy Terror. An empire of 1,000,000 worlds maintained by ceaseless sacrifice, an endless lack of mercy, and everlasting hatred. Gaze into the Imperium, and you will bear witness to the baleful excesses festering in the heart of man. For in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable, human lives have become a currency to squander in the billions. Here, sweat and blood are shed on a titanic scale in order to uphold the rigid order of the Imperium, in a never-ending treadmill of human suffering and drudgery. Here, violence, hardships, and starvation are ever-present companions to life. Here, draconic punishments will be arbitrarily visited upon anyone who fails in their duty or steps out of line. Sometimes, such retaliation will be carried out with passionless monotony. At other times, the penalties will be dealt out with righteous furor. And sometimes, the punishment will be executed upon the offender with a poorly concealed sadistic glee. To be branded a heretic, malcontent, deviant, or infidel in the Imperium is to face a host of imaginative possibilities. There are the possibilities of instant death at gunpoint, of beheading, lynching, hanging, blinding, maiming, burning, stoning, quartering, flaying and drawn-out torture, or lobotomization and slavery as a cyborg thrall, or guilt-ridden arco-flagellant. Among a myriad of possible punishments are to be found that archaic one of sawing, wherein the wrongdoer is shackled and extended helplessly from a frame, usually hanging upside down. The executioners will then slowly work through the sinner with a cross-cut saw or two-man eviscerator, the sawyers usually chanting, damning the criminal or shouting admonishments to the crowd of onlookers, while the teeth of their tool tear through flesh and bone. Oftentimes, such executions by sawing will be recorded by Vox units and captured by picked casters to be cabled out to public loudspeakers and picked screens, distributed throughout the more decent parts of cities and void homes. This is done in order to benefit the betterment of the people's wretched souls, as the shrill shrieking in pain and agonized yelling of the sword one will warn sinful humanity to take heed, resist temptation, such as hunger pangs, and blindly obey their superiors without question or tardiness. The public butchering of deviants, criminals and heretics will usually be followed by their flawed flesh being burnt upon the pyre, or carted away to be recycled into the foodstuff known as corpse starch. Wild rumours claim that if you saw an orc in half without burning the remains, 2 whole orcs will regrow out of the halves. This abominable phenomenon has only been observed in mankind a rare few times, with grossly mutated humans tainted by the touch of chaos. Wherefore the mutilated husks of mutants will, as a rule, be burnt to ashes, in order to not contaminate the dull ration bars of the populace. Trust in flames to cleanse corruption and filth. And so, every day, somewhere in the Imperium of Man, thousands of bystanders view the spectacle of executioners sawing a man, woman, or child to death. The crowds view it with their own eyes, listening with their own ears to the noise of suffering and slaughter, as saw teeth rip through fibers and cartilage. They see the suffering and the righteous punishment visited upon the wicked, and they ken the warning. Thus all is well in the sacred star realm of the Emperor on Earth. For what is happiness but the feeling that power is growing, that resistance is overcome, just as the saw of justice overcomes the sinner's flesh and bone. Such is the malevolent fate of unknown numbers of deviants and heretics. Such is their fell demise. It is the 41st millennium. Humanity has banished remorse from its heart of stone. Truly, the age of Imperium is an epoch of lives crushed under heel and naked evil at full display. And so the future of our species grinds on, its rusted prison a doomed empire, its blood-stained tormentor man himself. Such is the fate of our species, in the darkest of futures, in cruelty unending. Hangman. It is the 41st millennium. Lately, the Imperium of Man has seen its dominion over the stars be challenged far to the galactic east in Segmentum Ultima. An upstart Xenos species, known as the Tau, have risen quickly in but few millennia, from prehistoric barbarity to undreamed of heights of technological supremacy and scientific mastery. In many ways, the young Tau Empire mirrors the early stages of humanity's own dark age of technology, with their deep understanding and grasp of the material arts, their strong optimism and drive to expand, and their growing reliance on abominable intelligence. The Tau Empire is positioned far, far away from Holy Terror, and their warp travel is still only rudimentary and incapable of long-distance voyages, confined to skimming the surface layers of the Empyrean, as opposed to diving deep through the mystic hellscape as Imperial vessels routinely do. By a pure chance of astrogeography, the Tau realm is situated amidst a tight cluster of stars, enabling a rapid regional expansion and colonization even at such an early stage of their warp-breaking starship development. In short order, the energetic Tau have settled numerous worlds and incorporated a range of sentient species as vassals of the greater good. Tau cultural subversion and commercial influence in Imperial systems on the Eastern Fringe has grown steadily worse in but a few centuries of contact with human colonies. For the first time in unknown eons, the hope for a brighter and better future has been sparked among human worlds, and vast swathes of planetary populations on the Eastern Fringe now look to a Xenos intruder to save them from the crushing tyranny of the Imperium. Resistance movements, underground propaganda cells, xenophile smuggler rings, passive insurgency groups and terrorist cadres have formed on dozens of Imperial worlds, thereby threatening sacred Terran dominance and importing the goods and ideology of the aggressively expanding Tau Empire to human colonies. Naturally, Imperial response to these brewing rebellions have been brutal, resulting in scenes of mass murder, auto-da-fe of public torture displays, the filling of labor camps with prisoners on starvation rations, and much more besides. For the most part, these stark methods have been counterproductive, since they stand as cruel reminders of what the Imperium has in store for its subjects, thereby rendering the Tau Empire into an all the more appealing alternative for many by contrast. Populations have been split into hostile camps of Imperial loyalists and Tauazers, and brother has turned upon brother, while sister detests sister with vehemence. Neighbors have come to shun each other and teach their children to hate the opposite side, and thus a painful rift of strife and kinslaying has been rent open on worlds sworn to obey the god Emperor alone. During the Third Sphere expansion in 997-999.M41, Tau forces overran multiple Imperial systems in a brilliant dash of high mobility, combined arms warfare, and superior usage of sophisticated technology, especially plasma weaponry and marker-like targeting systems. As the conquering hosts of the greater good fought their way across Imperial planets, a mass fury of society struggle engulfed the beleaguered human colonies. Loyalists and xenophiles struck each other without mercy in the towns, cities, and even villages, setting old scores in an orgy of arsony, street battles, torture, massacres, and outrage. As one side gained the upper hand in a settlement, the victors would muster a haphazardly equipped militia and march on neighbouring settlements, falling upon hostile kinsfolk in a murderous frenzy amidst the full confusion of civil war. Bloodlust and hatred gripped the human populace of many Imperial worlds, and planetary defense forces, as well as off-worlder Imperial armies shipped in to defend His Divine Majesty's frontier domains, executed large number of deserters, spies, and suspected traitors on the flimsiest of pretexts. Examples were made of shirkers and suspects to strike fear into the hearts of soldiers and keep any doubters in line, and thus a state of terror rattled the Imperial military and civilian society alike. While the human infighting aided Tau conquest of many worlds, the Tau Firecast and its commanders in the field did not appreciate the havoc unleashed by these future members of the greater good. The ingrained Tau sense of supreme order and harmony was deeply disturbed by such wanton displays of human mass kinslaying and savagery. And moreover, military operations against Imperial defense formations were often disturbed by the unpredictable course of raging civil war. Still, the local interruptions to the short-lived burst of Third Sphere expansion were usually dealt with quickly by the overwhelming firepower and excellent coordination of forces which the Fire Warriors and Aircast pilots always strove to bring into combat. One of the many harrowing sights which met advancing teams of Fire Warriors in burning Imperial city streets were the thousands upon thousands of hanged Imperial soldiers, dangling lifeless from street lumens, gargoyles and rafters, hanged with rope, wire and cables. Yet again, the optimistic Tau upstarts were confronted with a glimpse of the sheer, unrelenting horror reigning over mortals of the Milky Way galaxy, from end to end. For the pious servants of the Divine Emperor on Terra are utterly blind to reason and deaf to mercy. And they will stop at nothing to slaughter the alien, the heretic, and the traitor. They will spare no one, and they will kill their own kin to keep the rest in line. Such is the ruthlessness that lurks in the heart of our species, a cruelty set to devour the human soul in an age of terror, in an epoch without compassion, in a time without hope. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.